friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And I just got done shooting a video about beans, so I thought I'd leave them out here because they do kind of go with the topic I'm going to be talking about today. But it's not really going to be my story. I'm reading somebody else's story. So recently, I believe it was under the video where I was talking about grow where you're planted. And I'll link to that video down below, plus the one, if it's published by the time you see this, I did about why I still live in Washington State, and anything else I think would go well with this topic. So you can go check those out if you want. But it was in the video about grow where you're planted where this lady came in and gave her testimony. And I asked her if she would mind if I read it in a video so that people could hear it. I thought it would be good for me to read it so people can just turn this video on and let it play and listen while they're doing the many things they need to do. And for those who would prefer to watch, well, what I'm going to do is go ahead and put some pictures in here like I always do. But just know whatever images I'm going to be putting in here are all my own. They're not this lady's images. They're just things I've done that are similar to what she's doing here so that I can at least have something interesting going on the screen for you. This testimony is especially for those who are just not knowing where to start, especially if they're on limited funds or living in a small area and they just feel very inadequate because they don't have what this YouTube homesteader has or what that YouTube homesteader has. And that's something I try to encourage people not to do, is don't compare yourselves to us or to anyone else. I mean, we don't have a lot of things that certain other people have, and vice versa. We're all going to be coming from different areas, and we're all going to have different skills and different things to work with. And it's about knowing, it's about learning how to make the most of what you have. And what this lady did here is incredible. Making the most out of such limited funds, limited space, and more. And we all can do something. We can all make steps in the right direction. And out of all the messages I give about homesteading, to me, this is the most important one. And being prepared is making the most of what you have. So let's get started on this testimony. I apologize in advance for this long story, but I want to share my experience so far with getting prepared. I am a single parent with an autistic child, and my only income is her SSI. Public school hasn't worked out for her, so I homeschool. We live with my mother to share expenses. Because my child is on SSI, we get food stamps. Now, before anyone has the urge to degrade me or berate me for being on food stamps, I'm sharing my experience to help and inspire others in my situation who have limited funds or have their hands full with a disabled child. So do not be rude. Keep in mind, I worked for 10 years before having her, so I've paid taxes and money that went to SSI and public assistance. That's not the point of this. So on SSI, we get less than $1,000 a month. That is nothing anymore. And until this month, because my daughter has SSI, we weren't getting the full amount of food stamps for a family of 2. Extremely minimal funds. But this week, I've canned 4 rabbits, a gallon of milk, half a gallon of juice, water glass 3 dozen eggs, a dozen birthday cakes that I've canned for when we can't find any more in the store. I have bone broth cooking to be canned and more meat to can. I also already have vacuum sealed rice, canned 10 pounds of ground beef, soup stock, pickled eggs, and various bulk and canned foods I've stocked up on from Costco. Slowly each month, I'm buying 2 extra cases of bottled water from Costco also, so we always have some on hand. What I want to do is share how I got to this point. I read the Little House books to my daughter, and we both got interested in making stuff by scratch like Laura Ingalls Wilder's mom did. So I started making foods that Laura's family loved, succotash and Almanzo's favorite, apples and onions, simple things with only a few ingredients. Apples and onions, because they were caramelized and sweet, got me interested in making my own desserts from scratch. So began making my own chocolates and desserts. Vegan, but not intentional. I was just trying to add more nutrition than what things like cream cheese provided. When I realized how nutritious and yes, fun it was to make healthy but tasty foods that looks like desserts from scratch, I began looking at medieval recipes. I found they used lentils and things the world these days considered desserts. Oats, lentils, raisins, fresh fruit, nuts, nut flours. You could live on that and never feel hungry. And when I made those things, there was always leftover food because the dishes are so filling. So by making food by scratch, it cut out the need to keep making new meals. I could just open the freezer or fridge and pull out a healthy dinner. And since I didn't have to cook something new every day, I didn't use as many ingredients. My ingredients began to last longer. Honestly, it began by making things by scratch and trying to make foods our ancestors lived on. Then my mom got me a Costco membership for Christmas back 3 years ago now. While Costco doesn't have the variety we could find from Safeway or Winco, what I was able to get there on food stamps was canned beans, canned corn, canned veggies, canned meat, oats, milk, meat, tortillas, cheese, organic shakes for kids, boxed milk, and boxed juice. While we went through the dairy, most of the fresh meat, the shakes, and the juice every month, we were only using a couple of cans each month. Before I realized it, I didn't have to buy canned beans and veggies and corn anymore. Then I began saving the bones for bone broth. We would make that how they did back in the day, cook on low for 3 days with some added apple cider vinegar. When I strained it, I would make soup and keep adding to that as long as there were no beans that turned bad after a day or so on the stove. These were other ways I didn't need to cook every day and was able to keep from using ingredients quicker than I wanted. When I moved to the house I'm in now, I bought 4 chickens to lay eggs, 1 male rabbit, and 2 female rabbits for breeding. Trust me, this is hard. Baby bunnies are the cutest things in the world. I later got 2 more hens, and now I have more rabbits than I can count. Now there are eggs daily and fresh meat on hand. Only this year did I learn to can. Now pressure canning just doesn't work for me, so I water bath everything. Do not gripe about this. The U.S. is the only country that pressure cans. And even Amish in this country water bath everything. And by the way, I'm going to interject right here for those who are curious about this. Yes, water bath canning was the norm even here in the United States until pressure canners started coming out and getting pushed. And even then, even when the pressure canners first came out, even Ball had a canning table for both pressure canning and water bath canning low acid foods. I've collected that plus a couple other charts of how to water bath can low acid foods, and I have a link to that I'll be putting in the description box down below if you would like to learn more about it. If you already have a pressure canner like I do, then just keep pressure canning your low acid foods if that's what's best for you. I do it because it takes less time than water bath canning those same things. She goes on to say, pressure canning for safety is one of those FDA, USDA schemes to make people spend more money. All it does is really speed up the time for non-acid foods. The first things I canned were elderberry syrups, milk, and meat. Those did not go well because I followed stupid instructions found in other YouTube videos on canning that said only to screw the rings on until the jar starts moving by hand. And that is wrong. Yes, that is wrong if you're talking about metal lids. If you're talking about lids like Tatler lids, so I'm interjecting again, the reusable kinds, or I think it's called Harvest Guard, those ones you only turn the band until the jar starts moving. Because if you put them on the hand tight the way you would a metal lid, then the jar will explode and you'll get burned. That happened to me because I made that mistake with some Tatler lids. So it's important to understand the difference between the 2 types of lids. That could have been just a misunderstanding here on the type of lid, be it by the YouTube person that was instructing or not making it clear or whatever. Just so people understand, I want to interject that. So anyway, she goes on, that is wrong. You have to actually tighten the rings. a little, or the lids, the actual lids will not stay on and they will not seal. They will let water in and let food out, and then you'll have a bunch of jars inside watery soup. It was extremely discouraging, and no one on any canning forum had answers why. They were all reciting what I'd already done, but clearly they were doing something different when their jars didn't leak. Honestly, I gave up for a few months after that. I didn't try again until I needed to harvest my blackberries. I also watched a ton of canning videos, including Rain Country's channel. This time I did it right. I was able to put up 3 quarts and 12 pints of blackberries. Obtaining jars was one of the hardest things for me because I'm on a limited income and in a very small town. I have to drive 1 hour to get jars, but they usually don't have them at Costco anymore, and I only go down there once a month because I get car sickness super easy. Only recently, a thrift store near me had a bunch suddenly stocked, and on the day my daughter's SSI came in, so I grabbed them all up. Awesome. Having jars really does open up the opportunity to can food. So this week I was able to can a bunch of stuff, and now that I have jars, I can water bath more stuff. I also have a 65-gallon foldable water storage container off Amazon, and it's full of rainwater right now. Harvesting the rabbits was the hardest part of all of this. So far, I've done 2 roosters and about a dozen rabbits this year. Taking a life is never easy, and sometimes I screw up, but harder yet would be to let my child starve because bunnies are cute. I push myself to follow through as quick as I can, and then it's easier. And now my freezer is full of rabbit meat, and I have a bunch canned. We won't run out, and I have more than enough to barter or share if it comes to that. Even though most months I'm not doing much as far as intentionally preparing to or preserving food, just by doing things that need to be done like grocery shopping and harvesting and cooking, I now have supplies for months, if not a year, all on a measly $921 a month plus food stamps. I know this is so long, but I really wanted to let people in a similar situations know you can prepare and preserve on limited income and food stamps. Even if the only jars you get are pickle jars or jars a candle might come in, you can preserve with those. Pickle or ferment veggies to store for later with salt and spices. At least you can store them in your fridge for months this way without them going bad. You can dehydrate carne asada meat for jerky for long-term storage by keeping your oven on its lowest setting overnight. Make broth and soup and freeze some of each. You can freeze cheese and milk for months later. You can also dehydrate cheese, by the way, and milk. If you have a dehydrator, those are great. You can freeze veggies to use months later. There is so much you can do to preserve food and to prepare for times when you can't afford food in the stores. Do not get discouraged. Do not give up. Make a way to feed your children months down the road. You can do it, even if you're on food stamps or SSI. You can do it with disabled children in the house. You can prepare yourself for the worst by starting small, even if all you can do is buy a can or 2 extra or extra dry beans each month. Every little bit adds up big time in the end. And that is absolutely true. And that's a message I'm constantly trying to share, is that don't look at what other people already have. Look at what you can do, even if it's just 1 extra can of vegetables that you can buy at the store that week, or even for that month. 1 extra this or 1 extra that. It's still a step in the right direction that's going to pay off. And having food preserved in storage is actually far better than money in the bank that can be taken away or lose its value. So do what you can. Keep moving ahead. And the thing about the jars I wanted to add too is, yes, secondhand jars or recycled jars. There's so much you can do with all these. In fact, all the jars I've gotten in the past couple of years, I don't think I bought any new jars. They've all been either people just giving jars away, which has actually been most of it. We got this massive last year, a massive haul on jars when we went to pick up something else from an estate sale. They had all these jars. They just wanted to get rid of them. They gave them to us. And I'm talking 2 large totes, like this big, of jars, plus several more boxes of jars. It was all sizes from pints up to half gallons. So that's how I have a lot of the jars I have. Also, family members no longer canning, gave them away. Neighbor down the road one year had jars just sitting along the corner, said free. Grabbed them, stuck them in the truck as I was driving by, and that's where I get a lot of my jars now. Secondhand, garage sales, yard sales, or people just giving them away. So don't give up looking. Look, and if you can't get out and go to garage sales and yard sales, at least start looking at places like Facebook Market or other, that's going to be a lot cheaper than eBay. And you'll find places that are people that are close to you that are just wanting to get rid of stuff. And that's a good way to get started in as food preserving items. Even water bath canners or pressure canners. So many people buy up this stuff and then never use it. That's how we ended up, even though I already had my big All-American pressure canner, we ended up getting 2 smaller All-American pressure canners a couple of years ago when there was an estate sale going on just down the road, and they were only going to sell them for $5 a piece. We went ahead and gave them $10 a piece and still came away with a really, really good deal. I gave one to my daughter-in-law and kept the smallest one for myself in case I just want to do little small batches, which was perfect, and I have done that. I'm glad I have both. And either one can be used for water bath canning as well. So if you do buy a pressure canner, you don't have to get a water bath canner too. You can use the pressure canner for water bath canning. Remember to check out that link I'll be putting down below that have 3 different charts in there from 3 different places giving you the times on water bath canning. And so you can go in there, you can download those images for yourself so you have them in your computer and maybe even print them off. So anyway, I hope you really enjoyed this testimony. I thought it was perfect, especially for those who don't have time to read through all those comments. This was one story that was so detailed and informative, especially based on the amount of money she's working with each month. I thought this was an incredible testimony. And all of us can do this no matter where we are. We just have to figure out where to start and what's going to work for us. So remember, most of us who are where we are now, we didn't get there overnight. We did it by working and saving and starting small and building up from there. And we're still working. We're still adding to what we have. We're still expanding our gardens and learning how to grow other things and so on and so forth. So anyway, I hope you found this encouraging. And if you have any more any testimonies you guys would like to share down below about how you got where you are now, and put those down below, and maybe those will be some future testimonies I will read. Okay, well, thanks for watching or listening. Take care, and God bless.